Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I'm Bret Boone. Today I'm joined by a friend of the program, a very unique friend of the program, former general manager, coach, player, current broadcaster, podcaster. He's everything. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ruben Amaro Jr. Ruben, thanks for making the time.
Jack of all trades, master of none, Booney.
You're doing it all. You're a quadruple threat. You're not a threat. You've done it. Not too many people have done that many things in that many capacities in our game. Out of the chute, what's the toughest division in baseball? I'm looking at AL East, NL East. Thoughts?
So I think the NL West is not going to be an easy one, and the reason why I say this is because I think Arizona is going to be a lot better than maybe some people think. Mm-hmm. And I think the Pods are still pretty darn good. So, that combination of those top three, Dodgers, obviously, then Arizona, and you know what? Don't sleep. You just can't sleep on the Giants just because of the moves that they've made as far as their leadership is concerned. Love Buster Posey. Mm-hmm. I know he hasn't done a ton other than making that pretty big deal for the shortstop, but I wouldn't put it past them. They've got some old school in them, and I think that they're headed in the right direction.
I'll tell you what, too, as a player, and you know this as well, something about San Francisco that has a built-in kind of home field advantage. As a player, back in the day when we went to Candlestick, no opponent wanted to go there.
No.
When you're the home team, you just have to kind of accept this is where I play. It turns into an automatic home field advantage. I'll tell you what, I don't like the new stadium either. It's San Francisco. It's cold in the summer. I don't know any players that like traveling there, especially with that right center field too. Nobody likes it. So I think San Francisco kind of always has had that.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. And the other thing is, the fans are nasty.
They're mean-spirited.
They have for being in California, about as mean-spirited as you can get. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about Philly and how aggressive some of the fans are there, and New York and Boston, etc. But I will tell you, they be rivaling some of those. The folks in San Francisco, they're not afraid.
And I'll tell you what. Take a trip over to Oakland too. It seems like you got about how football fans and baseball fans are different. Those are Raider fans coming to an A's game.
That's right.
We're no longer there. We're in San Jose, but the Oakland Coliseum for years and years.
Yeah, I will say the other thing I will say about the division. I think the NL East is going to be pretty darn good. I really do. I think the NL East is going to be pretty tough. I think that the Phillies have the edge just because they've won it last year, but you start talking about a healthier Atlanta Braves team.
Yeah.
They've got, and then the Mets have a different type of a mojo than they've ever had, with their new manager and that sort of new attitude. I know that their pitching is going to be a little bit of an issue because they've gotten banged up a little bit like the New York Yankees have. And there's some question marks in that rotation, but you know what? It's going to be tough. No simple task in the AL East or NL East.
No, I think it's definitely be better. A year ago, Phillies won the division. First time Atlanta hasn't won it in, I think, 6 years, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. I think you're right.
We're going to get to that in a second. Okay. We're going to do a little fun part, which the quadruple threat can only do, and that's you. Okay, when I watch games currently, Bret Boone, retired baseball player, analyst, baseball insider, I usually see it through the eyes of a hitter. Occasionally, I'll take that. I'll put a manager hat on. If I'm in the dugout right now, how am I reacting to whatever the situation is? I want to go through them with you because you really have done all. When you watch a game, okay, I'm gonna take it first. Put your player's hat on. We got to go back a little ways. It's been a while since you've been in uni as a player. Put your player's hat on. What do you think GMs, coaches, and broadcasters need to keep in mind pertaining to the player?
Are you talking about on the offensive side? Or are you talking about on the?
I'm just talking about how they interact around you as a player. Okay, you got a game today. What do they need to keep in mind when doing their job about the job you need to do to be at your best? Because at the end of the day, the players are responsible for the wins and losses. What do they keep in mind for the player to give them the best chance to succeed?
So there's a couple of things that I think get lost in the shuffle with some of the way people are evaluating players, putting together lineups. There's so many different things. My feeling has always been this. I never believed in the players being robots. They're not widgets. They're humans. And they may have a tough day at home. They may have a tough day. They may not be prepared that day. They haven't. There's a whole totally different set of rules as far as being able to enhance your ability to play every day. There's so many different factors that are associated with your overall performance that are so different from when we played than now. I do think that the players take care of their bodies much, much better. I do think that they put themselves in a position to be prepared physically a little bit better because they take care of their bodies a little bit better. But I think there's a lot of outside forces that are associated, family. There's so many different things that are going on that I feel like in this day and age, I know everybody wants to be comfortable and everybody wants to be in their certain role. When we played, like the manager told us where we playing, when we're playing, and we were prepared every day. Hey, I'm ready to go. Nowadays, they can't tell guys, 3 days in advance. Okay, you're playing this game and this game, and you're not playing in this game. It's a whole different, for better or for worse. Here's the issue that I have when that's the case. If a guy is hot as hell on the offensive side of the ball, and he has a scheduled day off on a Monday, and you're a catcher and you're seeing the ball as big as Dallas, and you have 2 or 3 great games and you're really seeing the ball. I don't want a day off. I don't want to sit that day. I want to play. And so, I mean, there's so many different factors when you're doing the mixing and matching and pairing and, sitting and resting and all that stuff. I just feel like you have to take certain things into account other than just what it says on paper or what the analysts may be telling you about the matchup between this guy and that guy. I just feel like there's so much more behind, how you're going to design your lineup, who you're going to put in there in certain situations, whether a guy can make an adjustment if he's pinch hitting or getting double switched in, whatever the case may be, whether you're matching up that one reliever, even though he might be right-handed versus a left-hander, the fact that I feel like this guy's throwing the ball really, really well now compared to this other guy. I don't trust him as much. There's so many different factors that I think that people have to understand other than just what it says on paper or what you're spitting out in a computer program.
Yeah,
and
because
that's the thing that gets me. I think that there is more of a tendency for the analytics folks to impress on the manager or impress on the pitching coach or impress on the GM such that certain decisions need to be made in a certain way. And I think that we can't lose sight of some of the human element of what these guys bring to the table and what they're prepared to do.
Yeah, and I think, the analytics weren't there 15, 20 years ago. I mean, they were there, but they were just kind of making their way through. You didn't have these you as a GM, I'm sure you didn't have a complete analytical team like they do now. And the decisions back then were based more on gut when it comes to the skipper. You had to earn the right to know if you had a day off. I remember as an everyday player, I came to the big leagues as a rookie. And I still had to check the lineup every day, and I was in there every day. Now, as I earned that a little bit through the years, and a couple of years later, now my manager would come to me maybe the day or 2 days before, say, Booney, I'm going to give you a blow on Thursday. Doesn't mean I like it, but
Yeah.
he gave me. I felt like I had earned the right that he would
Correct.
give me that. If for a utility player, you earn that right when you establish yourself. You earn that right. If you don't know when you're playing, it's hey. Thursday, be ready. And I appreciated that about the great managers, but it just wasn't expected. It's kind of something you had to earn. And when you earned it, it was that much more gratifying, I thought, as a player.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I went through it on the 95 Indians team. I sat on the bench pretty much every single day. We had one of the most amazing lineups of all time. Kenny Lofton leading off.
I think Tomey was hitting like 7th or 8th.
Yeah, they had Tomey and Manny Ramirez written 6 and 7 or 7 and 8 in the lineup.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that'll tell you a little something about the depth of that. And I understood that I wasn't going to play very much, but you had to be prepared just in case. I mean, you just never knew.
Right. You never
and you had to be prepared for that. I think that, now, don't get me wrong, I think that there's some really great information that is now being provided, that people are extrapolating, that people are utilizing, and in a lot of ways that can be an advantage. But I also think you have to also take into account that particular player's performance as of late. If I know that this guy's swinging the bat well, period, and he's facing a tough righty late in the game, and I know I've got a very good left-handed, pinch hitter that typically would take this at bat in a crucial situation. But if that guy's swinging the bat well, why would I pull him? That's so difficult to get a base hit off the bench. It's almost impossible, pinch hitting and that kind of thing. And unless you were extraordinary, not too many guys were able to do that all that well. Let that kid have that at bat. He's seeing the ball well. I'm going to stay with him. I mean, I just feel like, again, there are some great elements that the analytics folks have built and information that has been provided, but I don't think that you can shy away from what it means when you're watching the game of baseball, when you're watching the game develop, what's the right move and what is not the right move.
And, I talk about pitchers and talk to pitchers before the big analytical push. And I said, what's going into a game? How do you prepare? Because I know as a hitter, I'm prepared. I'm going to watch video of probably his last start against me. I have a recollection in my mind, my history with whoever said pitcher is tonight. I'm probably going to look at his last start. But when it comes down to it, how's he pitching? How's he done his last 2-3 starts? And pitchers very much so. When I ask them, how did you prepare going into a series when you're going to start game 3? And as much as the game gets more analytical and technology advances, and by the way, I'm very envious of the players today and what they do have at their fingertips. I would have loved that. I was one of those guys. Give me all the film you can because I'll watch it all night and now formulate in my mind. But I look at the analytics, and that's great. But the pitchers it came down to this. As much as we complicate or go forward, progress in our game, there's still some things that are pretty simple. And they'd say, basically, when I came into a series, it's like, I'm going to look the who's hot and who's not list. And that's who I'm going to avoid. And I don't think it changes. As much as we want to change the game and reinvent it, a lot of it comes down to that, who's hot and who's not. And I'm just alluding to you talking about hitters when they're hot and you have a scheduled day off. Hey, you might want to back that scheduled day off till you drop an 0 for 4 because ride that wave, get the most out of a streak you can. I used to hate that. I'd be hot as a firecracker, and Lou Piniella would come to me, hey, Booney, on Friday, it'd be Monday. Say, hey, Friday, I got to give you a blow. He said, you've played 30 in a row. I said, Lou, I don't really care. And right now, I'm really good. Let's talk about Friday when Friday comes. Right. And that was just basically strictly to give you a physical day off. But you're right. When you're hot, man, there's not too many times you ever want out of the game. But once in a while, that skipper will come to you, look on your face. You might be 1 for your last 12. Say, hey, I'm going to give you a blow tomorrow. You say, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm in.
Yeah, perfect.
And those are, and you use that with a little maturity as a player. You get to know
Yeah.
yourself, and hey, he's right. I need a blow right here. When I was a kid, it's like I could be 0 for 50, and there's no way I'm not starting tomorrow. But as time went on, sometimes it is. We're not all Cal Ripken,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Cal Ripken probably
right,
shouldn't have done it.
right. You say something interesting about the pitching too. Certain pitchers have tendencies to do X, Y, or Z. Okay, but if you're watching the game as it develops, and 60% of the time on a 1-1 count, this guy throws a slider. Okay, you have that in your brain, but if you're watching the game, you're seeing that guy's slider is just not very effective, or he can't throw it for a strike. Then that's a pitch that you eliminate until you don't have to eliminate it. I mean,
Right.
that's how I don't I like to. The cool thing about what I've seen, especially with the Phillies in particular, is that their pitchers and their guys on the bench and their guys when they're hitting, even the guys that are playing every day, they're on the top step and they're watching the pitcher. They're watching him and they're watching his tendencies and they're trying to pick something up and they're seeing whether the guy, hey, can this guy throw a breaking ball for a strike? Because if he's throwing breaking balls and we're swinging at him, there's balls out of his hand, then maybe we should just eliminate that pitch. And that's something that I think has to happen for them in the playoffs, which has not happened as of late. Over the last 2 or 3 years, they've kind of gotten knocked out because they've been a little over aggressive. But those are the things, and they do that actually pretty well during the season. They have to sort of continue to do that during the year, or during the playoffs. But I think that the game sometimes, I mean, if you just watch the game, if you just watch it and you scout it as I sat on the bench a lot, so that's what I did. I mean, you can pick up a lot of different things about a pitcher. Hey, he might be blowing our doors off, but I might be able to eliminate 1 or 2 pitches because he may not throw that for a strike. So, hey, why would I look for a pitch that I don't think the guys can throw over the plate? And so I think there's so many things that you can learn that I think people and players and GMs and coaches and staff members can learn just by watching the game that day. Because as you know, everybody's different every game. I mean, if otherwise everybody would have a 0 ERA and everybody would hit 1,000. If adjustments didn't have to be made all the time, and I think that's still a really super important element of the game.
And I think as a hitter, as I got a little bit older, my goal every game was to eliminate a pitch. If I can eliminate a pitch from you and you've got 3 or 4 pitches and I can get it down to 2 or 3, advantage me. If I can take away fastball away on the outside corner to get a strike because of a result, because I took that pitch and hit it in the hole, that eliminate a lot of pitchers' psyches go, wait a minute, that was a pitch. That's where I wanted to put it. He stroked that ball to right field like it was no big deal. I just eliminated fastball away for 90% of the pitchers on the hill. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now I can go into, he's either going to try to trick me or he's going to come inside. That makes hitting so much easier. And that was my goal, to eliminate. I'd watch, when you talk about watching and paying attention, I take it deeper. I'm going to go to the catcher. What are his tendencies? I got to take this whole formula. What have I done against these pitchers? What have I done against their team? What have I done this series? What is that pitcher scared to throw in a certain situation? What does that catcher tend not to throw in a situation? Now I can formulate my plan as a hitter. And I've got all this in my brain before I go to the plate. Now, if I'm disciplined enough to stay with that over 162 games, I'm probably going to give myself the best chance to have the best outcome I can. And I can't just I can't waffle. Because I get beat in a particular at bat, that doesn't mean abandon the system. That means no, over time, I'm going to come out on top more times than not. Or I'm going to come out, I'm going to give myself the best chance for my individual to have the most amount of success. And I learned that later in my career. And I started watching the great hitters. I watched Manny Ramirez, and he was unbelievable at it. The way the mental discipline he had to stick with his program. And, when I'm talking to young hitters these days, and I know we've got way off topic, but this is my favorite part of baseball. When I'm talking to young hitters in today's game, sometimes they're not ready for that level of thought process. They don't they don't have the confidence. They don't have the confidence to go up there in a big situation and sit on a breaking ball and have to sit on it for 4 pitches because the guy just threw you 3 heaters and now it's 2-1. That's when it's coming.
Right.
And if you can wait them out, you're going to have some success. Now, when you get it, don't miss it. But that's the hunt.
My biggest issue, and I was not a very good hitter at the major league level. I was much better in the minor league level because I was exploited, and I never crossed my mind until late in my career. Like, listen, I can look for a curveball when I was hitting left-handed, and I wasn't going to hit it. So why would you look for a pitch you're just not going to hit?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's part of the evaluation.
Yeah,
Some people can.
Yeah, part of being a great coach, John Vukovic, our good friend John, who you know quite well, who you knew quite well, God bless him. He said, "Hey, why are you looking for a pitch you can't hit? Just stay on the heat and stay on the hard stuff because that's what you can hit. Otherwise, sometimes you just got to tip your cap."
Yep.
It made a lot of sense because then I'd be looking for the breaking ball, and then all of a sudden someone would fire that heater past me, and I would go, "Jesus."
See, so Ruben,
if
you're a young hitter right now, I need, as Bret, the coach, I need to know, hey, Ruben's not comfortable with that particular approach, so we can't go there with him. You got to pick and choose who's comfortable with it.
Yeah.
For me, I would sit on the breaking ball, and I'll tell you why. If there was a pitcher out there, and I just, for whatever reason, I'll give you just a John Smoltz comes to mind. He was a guy over my career. For some reason, when he got to the top of his release point, every pitch came out of his hand to me looked like a 4-seam fastball. Every single pitch, I could not lay off his slider, and he abused me on it because he would throw that slider, started on the outside corner. I think it's a heater away. He would break it off the plate. He wouldn't even throw a strike with it. So as a hitter, the last thing we like to do is, what don't we want to do when we go to the plate? Don't embarrass yourself. So I'd have to get to a point where the only chance I have to hit his slider and lay off his slider is to sit slider. I could do that. If I sit slider, I'm going to take the fastball automatically. But if I get that slider, I can get you. But if I'm looking heater off Smoltz and he throws me 3 sliders, it's probably going to be swing and a miss, swing and a miss, swing and a miss, and I'm going to go back to the dugout and go. So that was kind of an emergency plan for me sometimes, is I've got to sit on the breaking ball because I'm not seeing it. And if I don't sit on it, I'm going to chase it. I also, for my particular skill set, if you threw me a breaking ball for a ball, I had the ability to lay off it. I was reading it because I'm looking for it. But that's an individual thing that you have to go player. It's a player by player kind of case on. It's not for everybody. Like you alluded to it. If I sat on a breaking ball, you said you still weren't going to hit it. Well, that's Ruben Amaro. So we got to treat that, your process and your mindset when you go to the plate, a little bit differently than maybe player B.
Yeah, and I think Charlie Manuel used to talk about this all the time. One of the things that is really important as a major league athlete is to know yourself, know your strengths, and know your weaknesses and understand those. And, at the end of the day, if you play more to your strengths, if they're good enough strengths, you're going to have success. Same thing with a pitcher. You can't, if you're a sinker slider guy and that's how you feel, then, you're introducing like the sweeper that some of these guys are now throwing, and you can't quite get it. If you're going to do or die, I would die with the pitches that I'm feeling comfortable with, and I know that I can execute, rather than going with a pitch that I know, hey, this guy may not be able to hit my sweeper. Well, if you throw a crappy sweeper, what's the difference? That ball's getting whacked. Yeah. And I think people have to, knowing yourself and understanding yourself as a player, at the end of the day, I would always go with my strengths versus that other opponent's weakness. That's where I'm at.
All right, let's get to the Phillies. 95 wins a year ago. I mentioned at the top, won the division for the first time in a while. Atlanta's kind of had a death grip on that division. You mentioned the Mets, and we'll get to them in a minute. They made a lot of moves this offseason. Cohen kind of taking finances to another level in New York. Oh, yeah. But let's talk about the Phillies. A year ago, that starting rotation was really good. Wheeler and Nola have been the consummates. They've been there at the top of that rotation for years now, and we know about the lineup. But let's take. You got Romano in the bullpen from the Blue Jays and Luzardo, starting pitcher. Talk about that rotation and that bullpen and what you see coming in 2025.
Well, it was pretty clear that Taijuan Walker was not the same Taijuan Walker that they signed coming from the Mets. And so he had been struggling. And I think, I've always been a pitching guy, pitching first, pitching, because you put yourself in a position to win every day, especially starting pitching, if you have quality starting pitching throughout. And I think the Phillies did a really nice job of picking up Luzardo. I think that he is sort of the perfect fit for them. I don't view him as a number 5 starter when he's right and healthy. He's probably like a 2 or 3. And so you're looking at a bunch of 2 or 3s and a really good quality 1 in Wheeler. Yep. And then after that, you're looking at some really good arms. And Christopher Sanchez have come a long way. Ranger Suarez, when he's healthy, was, first 2 months of the season last year, was the best pitcher in baseball. But you add Luzardo to the mix here, and you sort of push Taijuan Walker to a long roll or spot starter type situation. I think you created some depth. They also signed Joe Ross to add to some of that depth in case they have a breakdown. I think that starting pitching depth has always sort of been a little bit of a question mark over the last couple of years for the Phillies. It's been a little bit of a weakness, but I think they've shored that up, particularly with a guy like Luzardo, just because if he stays healthy, he's a guy that has the guts and has the moxie and has, the type of attitude that's necessary. He loves pitching in Citizens Bank Park. I've seen him pitch in playoff situations there. I like this guy. He wants the baseball. He's got really good stuff, and he stays on the mound, and he's healthy. I mean, I view the Phillies rotation top to bottom, top 2 or 3 in all of baseball.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
I think it puts him in a really, there's an argument that they could be number 1 if, start taking into account some of the issues the Dodgers have had health-wise in their rotation over the years and the level of inconsistency as far as picking up the innings. I know they have a great rotation. I know they got great arms. They've got, all-stars throughout. But, those guys don't log the innings that some of the guys, I think, in the rotation with the Phillies can log. That said, you got to play it on the field. But I really like their rotation. As far as Romano, I think he was a great sign. They did lose Hoffman, who had an extraordinary season. Goes off to Toronto, and Estevez, who they picked up in the middle of the year last year. They lost both those guys and picked up Romano. I really like Romano. Again, another guy who likes the spotlight, likes to pitch in the 9th when he's healthy. I don't know that he'll necessarily be their closer because Rob Thompson likes to sort of mix and match. But you start putting that combination together with Strom, who had a great year. He's a little banged up right now. I think he's going to start the season perhaps on the IL, but he'll be ready pretty soon. He's been backed off a little bit with some shoulder issues, but he had a ridiculous year last year. I think Orion Kirkring's got a chance to be a closer at some point. His stuff is nasty, and he's got guts. He wants the baseball late in the game, and I think he's going to get pushed further and further back in high leverage situations. And Alvarado, he's had a resurgence. He came into camp knowing that he didn't have a great year last year, put himself in unbelievable shape. He's throwing 100 and 101 miles an hour right now, almost right out of the chute. Nasty cutter. A couple of years ago, he was the best left-hander out of the pen in baseball. Lost a little confidence last year. Was not as healthy. Came in great shape. A lot of things have to work for that bullpen. I think that's one of their sort of weak links, and they're hopeful that everybody sort of bounces back. But you know how volatile those bullpens are. So one year they're great, next year they're so-so. Next year, you just never know what you're going to get. But they certainly have the power and the arms to be able to get it done. It's just a matter of whether or not they're going to be healthy and confident and be able to get it done on a consistent basis. But I mean, I like this ball club. I still think it's one of the top 4 or 5 ball clubs in all baseball, and I think they're pretty poised to defend that National League East. But the Mets and the Atlanta Braves, man, you cannot rule them out. Just can't.
And those good divisions, as in years past, it's different now with a more balanced schedule. So they're not the really good divisions. You don't have to beat up on each other all year,
right?
You talk about the health in today's game and the innings that are logged by these pitchers, it's different. It's different than in years past, where now I even heard Dodgers about going to a 6-man rotation, and you've got they've got at least 4 number ones in that rotation if healthy. The
Yep.
Glass now is Snell, uh, Yamamoto. Who knows what this Sasaki kid's going to be like? I've seen tape of them all. Is the only thing I've seen, but he's long and lanky. He's got those limbs. He looks like a kind of a DeGrom to me, which is scary. And then Otani, that scrub in the 5-hole, if he eventually comes back,
he stinks.
Yeah. And then you got Kershaw. I laugh because Kershaw's 37. He's obviously not in his prime, but I know the great pitchers, the all-time great pitchers like a Greg Maddux. Even when Greg was 40 years old, and I had to face him, he wasn't that Greg Maddux that he was when he was 30, but he was still Greg Maddux, and he was good enough to be a number 3 on any starting rotation. You look at that Dodger rotation, not getting ahead of myself. You look at that Dodger rotation. If everybody's healthy, Kershaw's like the 7th starter.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is ridiculous. One of the all-time greats in the history of baseball. Go to that. I look at the offensive side of the ball. Great offense. One of the most formidable offenses in either league. There's a lot of talk about Boone, the third baseman. Is he going to get moved? They ended up standing pat, and he's going to be back. The cohesiveness, it seems like, and kind of Harper's the focal point. He's the guy in the cover of the media guide, and kind of seems like he runs a ship. But it seems that's a pretty good group of guys that really get along. Kind of remind me of that, not from a personality perspective, but how they get along. The Astros recent teams and the big run they've had, they just kind of seem like they're all talking to each other, and it's a real cohesive unit. Like I said, not necessarily personality wise are they like the Astros, but it seems like it's a pretty good group, and it seems like Harper's kind of the heartbeat of that lineup. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I think one of the things that and a lot of people were, a lot of the Philadelphia fans were like upset that more moves weren't made. There was a lot of talk about whether Boone was going to get moved and whether they had to shake up the lineup. And the reality of it is, this is a really good, talented offense.
Yeah.
And it's just really a matter of, guys getting better. Like the younger guys, the Bryson Stotts, who I think had an off year because he had an elbow problem. I think that they diagnosed that. No one really knew about it. He was not able to swing the bat like he typically would. So he regressed a little bit last year, numbers wise. I think this guy, I said this 2 years ago. I think at some point he's going to have a chance to make a run at a batting title, just because I think he handles the strike zone well. He understands and feels comfortable hitting with 2 strikes. He had an off year last year. I think he's going to be much better. Alec Boehm finished off the year. It was not a great finish to the season. He ended up getting benched during the course of the playoffs and such. And there's some question about, his attitude and that kind of stuff. Well, he came into camp, and I've talked to all the coaches. I've seen him. I've chatted with him a little bit. He's doing great. He's had a great spring. His attitude's excellent. I mean, you could, if you're a semi-young player, and all you hear off season is you're going to get moved, you're going to get traded, you're going to get traded, it could make you a little bitter. It could make you a little different. Well, he came into camp. He was great. And I just think, just overall, with Harper and even a guy like Schwarber, who's sort of another guy, like a glue guy for the organization, those guys sort of keep a very steady, positive clubhouse. And I think they genuinely like each other. Not every clubhouse is like that. I think these guys genuinely like each other, enjoy playing with each other. And I also think that they're pretty bitter about the fact that they didn't get further along. I think they feel like, they dropped the ball a couple of times, and they've got some things to prove. And so I think they're being a little bit more quiet about it this year. I know last year they had sort of the chip on their shoulder and wanted to get out to a good start, and they did. I think they're being very quiet about it, very businesslike about it, not talking about it, just, going about their business in a professional manner. And I truly believe that at the end of the day, if they, they're definitely a contending team. It's really just a matter of whether or not they're hot and they're playing good baseball when it's time to do that in October.
I think the last 2 years in the playoffs, first with that Diamondback team in 23, I mean, there's not a person on earth that, with that atmosphere in Philadelphia at that stadium during that series with the Diamondbacks, that would say, yeah, the Diamondbacks have a chance. That was one of the most remarkable things, that comeback that the Diamondbacks made, ended up advancing in the World Series. Last year, they got beat by, I think, the Mets just got caught lightning in a bottle. They got hot at the right time. And the Mets were the inferior team a year ago to the Philadelphia Phillies, and the Mets took care of business and took care of the Phillies a year ago. So you're right. Back to back, they got kind of hit by that. Man, they got hot at the right time team in the Diamondbacks and the Mets. Let's go to the Mets and the changes they made. Obviously, everybody's talking about the Soto thing. That was the biggest news of the offseason, record contract. But I look at that rotation, and I'm with you on do they have enough pitching? Senga is supposed to be that number one starter, and a year ago, he missed most of the year, came back, got hurt real quick again. Is he going to be healthy? Holmes is a big question mark to me, the closer for the Yankees going over there. And now all of a sudden, I heard he got the opening day start nod.
Yeah.
That's going to be weird. That mechanical mix up, I'm thinking that as a starting pitcher doesn't look right. But, hey, it'd be interesting to see if he can do it. And then you go Manaea, Montaz, who comes into the fold. They got Canning from the Angels. For me, you talk about the Phillies pitching staff, and then I look at the Mets pitching staff. I still think they're inferior. I think that staff is not as good as a lot of people think, but they have made a lot of improvements. You still have Lindor. You brought Alonso back. And like I said, Soto, and I think, Marte is going to do some DHing. It's a very formidable lineup. That's my thoughts on the Mets. I want Ruben Amaro Jr.'s.
I think it's a good club because I think that their leadership, Mendoza, their manager, I think, has done a heck of a job of sort of changing their overall persona, the way they go about it, their winning attitude. Carlos comes over from the Yankees and winning organization, and I think he did a spectacular job of sort of changing like the mindset of what it is to be a Met. Now, Lindor had that one, in the middle of the season, he had a meeting and in a lot of ways took a lot of heat and blame on himself. Ended up having an MVP type second half, went nuts and put his money where his mouth was. But I think that there has been a paradigm shift in how the Mets view winning. And when I was there as a coach, they didn't have that. It was something that we sort of try to work on. They didn't have that sort of winning attitude. They didn't do what was necessary to win baseball games, even though it had an unbelievable rotation. I think these Mets have a different attitude. I think in the playoffs, they exploited weaknesses. They knew how to exploit them, and they executed it. Oop, I might have lost you there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're back.
And I just think that, and they were hot. You're right. They were playing hot baseball. They were believing in themselves. I do think that their rotation is inferior right now just because there's more question marks. Holmes hasn't done it. Manaea, I think he had an unbelievable second half, and I think he's a great pitcher. Made that adjustment to pitch a little bit more like Sale. That was a major adjustment in the middle of the season and made him one of the best left-handers in the game for that period of time. Senga's still a question mark. He hasn't pitched in the big leagues. He hasn't thrown 200 innings. He hasn't done those things. The guys in the Phillies rotation, they have. And so that's the difference for me. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to be good. I think that they have a better understanding what it takes to win. I think the fact that they beat the Phillies in the playoffs last year gives them the confidence. Add Soto to that deal and the way he goes about his business offensively and on the field, and his confidence, his overall confidence on the field. I think that adds to the Lindor leadership. I think there's a lot of positive things going on there with the Mets, and you can't sleep on them. I don't necessarily think that on paper that they have the same amount of thunder as maybe the Atlanta Braves and the Phillies have, but they've won in the playoffs against as you said, probably a superior team, and they have a whole different sort of mindset than they once had. And that's going to make it tough on the NL East folks.
I agree with you on Carlos Mendoza. I didn't know Carlos until about a year ago. I got to meet him. I've had him on the show a couple times. And I remember the first interaction I had with him in Cincinnati a year ago. I was there for some event, and I met him, got to chat with him. And I remember talking to Aaron and saying, hey, I was really impressed because Carlos was the bench coach in New York for the Yankees a year before. And he said, Brett, he's one of my favorite all-time guys, and you would love him. And I met him. I was really – there's certain guys that strike you when you meet them for the first time. Carlos really made an impression on me. I was really impressed. And we just had a brief 15-minute conversation, but I really walked away from that really impressed. And the his short tenure there so far, it's really been impressive. And the fact that you say kind of just solidifies my thoughts that he really brings a different vibe, a different culture feeling in that Mets locker room. And I'm very impressed with Carlos Mendoza. All right, let's move on to the Braves. I think these are going to be the main three teams. Braves, Sale, Cy Young a year ago. You lose Fried, but you're going to gain Strider. You're probably not going to gain Strider till late in April, maybe the beginning of May, but one of the best pitchers in baseball when healthy. I like the Schwellenbach kid. I think he's got a chance to be. I think he's got a chance to be something. So that's going to be interesting how that plays out. You're getting Acuna back, the MVP 2 years ago, one of the best players. Azuna kind of picked up that a year ago, but I looked up and down that roster from a year ago. Albies missed a lot of time. Riley didn't have that year. Olsen still hit 30 homers, drove in right around 100, but coming off 54 homers, they're going to say he had a real down year. So they didn't have the offensive thunder. With Acuna missing, that'll probably be kind of a reason for that. He's going to be back. I don't know what his actual timeline is, but all being said, that team healthy, led by another skipper that I really am impressed with, and that's Mr. Snitker. I think he does a great job. Break down Ruben Amaro's version of that Braves club in 2025.
I think you broke it down really well. I think one of the things that people can't sleep on, man, they were hurt a lot. Yeah. I mean, when you start losing, major players. I mean, Riley got hurt. I know he wasn't having a great year when he did get hurt, but he's an MVP caliber player almost every year. Same thing with Olsen. Same thing with Acuna. These guys are on the field. Look out, brother, because these guys can play. And I know they had, and every player has off years. This isn't an age thing. This is just a matter of one, health, and two, just guys not having great years. And you can't sleep on these guys. They got Jerks and Profar playing left field every day.
I didn't even add him. I forgot about that.
That's another addition that, and I actually think that Alex Anthopoulos is one of the best GMs in baseball. I think he's super bright. I know he understands needs. I know he understands, what he needs to do to make his team better. I got to tell you, I can't. Again, the Atlanta Braves are not the favorite for me because I think the Phillies will win the division. But there's a lot of reasons why you would like the Braves, especially with them bouncing back. Now, them having lost their two catchers, basically, Darno's gone, and they just lost their number one to Andrew Murphy. That's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. But you see how they adjust from that. The rotation is going to be better with Strider coming back. I do think that Max Fried's loss and Charlie Morton's loss, the loss of those two guys, I think that's pretty big for them. That you can't sleep on that. So I think that's one of the things. And Schwellenbach, the guy you talked about, I mean, this guy's got some guts, man, and great stuff. And a converted, I think, infielder who he likes the baseball, man, is getting better and better and better. And it won't be long before he's in number 2 or number 1. But I like the combination. The fact that they did have some losses there in that rotation is going to hit them a little bit. And until Strider's back and doing his thing, it'll be a little bit of an issue. But once Strider's back, boy, that's a pretty good one. And their bullpen's been very, very good as well. So they don't have a whole lot of holes. Really, the question marks for them is their health. And if their health comes back, it's going to be a dogfight, man. Those three teams, I can see them just beating up each other quite a bit. Now, they only play, 13 times a piece each time? But so these teams are not only going to have to play well in their division, they're going to have to make some hay in the Central where they're weaker. in other divisions when they get opportunities to play some of those weaker teams. And I think the teams that win, the teams in the NL East that beat up on the teams they're supposed to beat up on consistently, those are the teams that are going to win that division or be contenders in that division.
I recently asked Snitger this when I had him on.
Love Snit. Love him.
This day and age, 2025, and we'll talk about the Phillies. How important is it for them? Now, I know as ball players, we think about, yeah, we're winning the division or bust. And everybody, oh, we're here to win the World Series. But how important is it today's schedule, the way it sets up, the way the postseason is set up? How important is it going in that we need to win that division, or is it just as important to just have a seat at the table?
Well, having a seat at the table, just because, to me, for the Phillies themselves, I think it's really important for them because they have that added advantage of that playing in that ballpark. There's not a team, there's not a player that plays on an opposing team against the Phillies that is not affected by that ballpark and those fan base. So I think it's different for the Phillies. I think for the other teams, I think they just get in and be hot. I think it's really important for them just to be hot and to be playing their best baseball when it's time to roll into, September and October. And if they're doing that, I mean, you see that time and time again. Not always the best team wins the World Series. I will say this because I believe it. In 2008, I don't know if the Phillies were the best team in baseball, but they won it because they were playing their best baseball, and they ended up playing the Tampa Bay Rays, who I know are not a better team than the Boston Red Sox that year, but the Rays beat them up in the ALCS. And so had it been a Philly-Boston matchup, might have been a totally different thing. But the Phillies happened to be playing really, really good baseball and understood what it took to win in the playoffs. And they had one pitcher that was unbelievable in Cole Hamels, who was absolutely lights out and unbeatable at the time. And when that happens, it becomes just like, I think Snit alluded to, is just get in there and be hot and have the hottest guys be the hottest at the right time. And if you can do that, you got a chance, man.
And for those of you listening to the podcast right now, they might not know our history, Ruben. Ruben was like a big brother to me back in his father was a coach in those Phillies teams in 70s and 80s. I forget the exact years there.
In the 80s, yep.
But remember being around those Philly teams, and they were great Philly teams. They only won one time.
Yeah.
And man, back then it was you had to fight through a tough division, and you had to beat Pittsburgh and
yep.
And you had
Montreal,
the Dodgers and the Reds were in the West.
Right.
But it kind of shows you when you had those great teams to just win it one time, man, it's tough. It's tough to win a World Series, no matter how good you are.
Nope.
Today, health seems to be a bigger issue than it used to be in our day. Whereas it seems like, I don't know if it's me, I haven't looked at the statistics, but it seems like everybody gets hurt all the time. A 10-day IL is like, oh, that's just normal for this month.
Yeah, I think that's a product, Brett, of I think the fact that most organizations are chasing velocity to a fault, especially with the pitchers, velocity and spin. And you're getting further and further away from the pitchability, the Greg Maddoxes, as you mentioned, of the world, even the Aaron Nolas of the world. I mean, Aaron Nola still, runs up 200 innings every year. And that's so important for the longevity and the viability of your team over the long haul, because it takes so much heat off the bullpen. When you have your bullpen having to eat up 50% of the inning of your season, it makes it really, really tough to be effective all the time, because you just can't out velocity teams and think that you're going to stay healthy. It's just not going to happen. So that's why I think starting pitching has become more and more important, and it always has been for me. Some people didn't think it was as important. I don't know why, but I think it even becomes more and more important because you take the heat off your bullpen that way. And you were right about going back to winning. Think about this. For 14 straight years, the Atlanta Braves won their division. They won one World Series.
95.
One. And that was against our team, and it was basically pitching over hitting because we had the best offensive team in the world and they had the best pitching team in the world. So it's hard to win. It's important to get to the dance. And I think there's a lot more opportunities to do that in this day and age, which is great. But if you get yourself hot at the right time, look at the Detroit Tigers, what they did. I mean, it was an amazing season for them.
They were sellers at the deadline. All of a sudden, they find a way to make it in and made some noise in the postseason. It's a different era of baseball. It's so much easier to get to the postseason, and I think, and there's my opinion is, once you get there, way harder to win than it was in past years. It was more of a marathon. That 162 was so important because only 2 teams are going to the postseason. In my day, you have 4 teams. In your day, we had 4 teams going to the postseason. Now you got 6 in each league. It's the easiest it's ever been, but I argue it's the toughest once you get there to make a prediction. If anybody made the prediction 2 years ago that the Diamondbacks were going to go to the World Series and the Texas Rangers were going to win, I want to know you. We'll go to Vegas this offseason,
right?
Or when we're getting to the postseason, and I'll put down a bet for who you tell me. But you're right. The game's changed. I think it's for the better. I love the postseason. I think from an entertainment value and eyes and new fans that you can get, I think it's a wonderful formula they came up with. But not the old school, the what's the word I'm looking for? The purist in me, man, I love back in the day when that 162 mattered because it was a grind. And when you were standing at the top of that mountain after 162, it kind of was a fact like, hey, in this particular league, we are the best team. And you don't see that as much.
Yeah, and typically the best team would win. Like you'd have the best team win, and nowadays it's not necessarily the best team that wins, it's the hottest.
Right. But you always got that trophy you can hold up and say, this says I am the best team.
Correct.
And I never got to do that. I got that second place trophy. All right. I'll give you a couple more. I'll let you out of here. Can anyone beat the Dodgers? Everything you've seen. For me, I've never seen a more talented group on paper, but health.
Yeah, no question. I mean, again, it's always about the health. If their pitchers stay healthy, it's going to be tough to beat them because you're talking about MVPs throughout the lineup. I mean, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and obviously Shohei. But those 2 guys, the first 2 guys I mentioned, 2 of my favorite players in all of baseball, 2 of my favorite people in all of baseball. They just do things so well and so right and so professionally and so in such a winning fashion that it's hard for me to bet against them, especially if they're on the field. They can do so many things. Aside from being great players, they bring so much more to the table. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, maybe the best all-around player you've ever seen. I mean, people talk about Babe Ruth, and I get it, but this guy's ridiculous. And
he has no peers.
Yeah, there's nobody that can do the things that he can do. And I just think that if they stay healthy, they brought back, Teoscar Hernandez. They fortified a little bit, with some other guys. And I mean, it's just a really difficult team. And Will Smith had a poor year last year. This second half of the season was terrible. I love Will Smith.
He's one of the best catchers in baseball. He's like the 6th best player.
Yeah, he's outstanding. He was in a 4-hole for most of the year, but really struggled for whatever reason. He had an off year, but I fully expect him to have sort of a turnaround year. So you're talking about some serious depth on this team. And boy, it's on paper, it's pretty obvious that, you start evaluating what they can do. Are they beatable? Of course they are, because that's what the beauty of baseball is. They got to play the games on the field, and they have to play well to win. They have Mookie Betts playing shortstop. Will he be able to play 162 games at short? I think he will. I don't know. I know that he's athletic enough, and like I said, he's like my favorite, person and player. But you just don't know. You gotta play the games on the field, and to me, that's the beauty of the game of baseball. Is that you make plans, and God smiles, baby. Because I've been there in 2011. I think we had the best team in baseball by far. We won 102 games and got knocked out by the St. Louis Cardinals. Because guess what? The Cardinals were managed well, and they were hot, and they beat up on the Phillies and knocked us out. So you just never know what's going to happen come playoff time, baby.
Dodgers, the way they've gone about it, found kind of a loophole in how to sign players and putting it off. And everybody's kind of up in arms about it. But I'm like, well, it's kind of within the rules. Probably down the line, or Major League Baseball might step in and close that loophole. But in the time being, they did everything legally. The Mets are a completely different animal for a different reason, because 99% of Major League Baseball franchises, and former GM, you operate on a budget. But the Mets have and Cohen have kind of said, I don't really care what the budget is. I pay what I want to pay. I know other owners are sitting there kind of with their eyebrows raised like, wow, now the price of poker just goes up with every signing he makes. But he's doing what he wanted to do. I don't think he hid that when he was acquiring the Mets. He said, I don't care about money. He's probably the richest owner out there. And he said, I care about bringing a World Series to New York City and the New York Mets. And so it's not like he came in with an agenda that he's just sneaking up on you. He said it was going to be like this. But the Dodgers, how they've gone about all these signings and pushing off the money to 10 years, and the Mets essentially operating on no budget and don't care what the ramifications are financially. Are they good for baseball? Or are they bad for baseball?
I think it's great. I think it's great, and I don't care. I like super teams, man.
Yeah,
I like it because it doesn't guarantee you. Hey, you can put all the pieces together. It doesn't guarantee you anything. The reality of it is that you have to play 162 games and then, win 11 more games or whatever it is in the playoffs to win a World Series. And so, hey, I think it sort of creates a buzz. What's wrong with that? I mean, and as long as you're doing it within the rules, which is in both cases they're doing it. I mean, I remember I was on MLB Network and I was sitting right next to Andrew Friedman, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. He's done a phenomenal job with the Dodgers. Just didn't know how great a job he was going to do when he was coming from the low, sort of lower budget Tampa Bay Rays and comes to LA. And how's he going to handle this? Well, he's handling it pretty damn well. I sat right next to him, and I guess San Diego, AJ Preller was like, "Hey man, you guys got to stop, this guy from continuing to spend." And Andy goes, "I'm not stopping. Why would I stop?" And why would he? Do what you got to do, man. Do what you got to do to improve your team within your means and within your budget. And it looks like there's not a whole lot of budget to be working with a couple of those teams, but I have no problem with it. I had no problem when the Yankees did it back in the day. I got no problem with what the Dodgers are doing. And I got no problem with the Mets are doing, because they're trying to win. And guess what? That's the whole point of having a franchise, is to try to win it. And that's what the fans deserve. And it also doesn't guarantee that they'll win. That's part of the beauty of the game.
Yeah. And that's, as players, that's all I know that's all I cared about. When I had an owner that at the end of the day wanted to win, man, you appreciate that being down in that clubhouse.
That's right.
Ruben Amaro Jr., I appreciate you coming on. There's a lot of good stuff. Check Ruben out. He's everywhere. He's broadcasting Phillies game, WIP. He's got his own podcast. He's everywhere. Check him out. I think it's the Philly Show is your podcast, correct?
That's right. The Philly Show with a good friend, Todd Zalecki and Jim Salisbury. It's been fun.
Very cool. Ruben, thank you. For those of you watching or listening to the Bret Boone podcast, if you're watching, we now have our own channel on YouTube. That's new. Check that out if you haven't. Download this podcast wherever you download your podcast or on the Odyssey app. And until next time, keep it here.